All right, welcome back, everybody. Today we're talking again about the bad boys of the Bible. So we're doing session 2 of From Zero to Hero.
Yes.
And this time we're going to go from the Old Testament and then go forward to someone from the New Testament who made a lot of mistakes but still did some good stuff.
No, we can't hate on the guy. We all make mistakes.
But this is just fun for me to do because you look back and you go, wow, those people, some of them just did some stupid stuff. And then some of them just life happened and they're down there at the bottom.
Yeah.
And when you're down at the bottom, it's probably hard to look up, especially if you're Joseph in the cistern and going, everything's going to turn out fine. It'll be good.
It's hard to find the bright side of that situation, for sure.
But that was just fun for me to go through and find these stories. So we're going to start with Gideon. So most people don't know the story of Gideon. Mm-hmm. But when you go into hotel, sometimes you open the drawer next to the nightstand next to the bed, and there's a Bible in there, and they're called Gideon's Bibles. They're produced and put in hotels by the Gideons, which is a Christian sect.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought it was okay.
And there was a song by Paul McCartney, and he uses the phrase Gideon's Bible.
Oh.
And then there was a movie with Peter Fonda in it. I think it was in the maybe late 80s, early 90s, and it's I think it's called Gideon's Trumpet. But it's about a man who's incarcerated and gets through adversity. But most of us don't know where those phrases came from, but it comes from the Old Testament. So Gideon was the 5th judge. He was the judge after Deborah. So we talked about Deborah,
right.
How God said, I want you to lead into battle, and Baruch went, no, I don't think so. I'll go if you do.
No, I don't think so.
But Gideon is the judge who follows her, but he doesn't follow her until after he does something heroic.
Oh. He has to build his street cred.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because when the story starts, he's just a young man who works in the field. And at that time, we're in Judges now, and it's also in this book of Chronicles, but at that time, the Midianites kept raiding the villages, and they'd take the crops, and of course they'd take the animals. They just kept raiding the villages, and these people weren't able to defend themselves. So when the story opens, we've got Gideon who's in the wine press thrashing the grain so they won't find him.
Oh, okay.
So he's basically hiding in the wine press, thrashing the grain, hoping the Midianites don't come in and steal it because his family needs the food.
Right.
So that's how we find him.
So he's already not in the best of times. It was the worst of times.
Yeah, it's right when just these raids just kept happening, and people knew that the Amalekites and the Midianites were probably going to come together and decimate.
Cause havoc.
And when you think about the word Amalekites, those are the very first people when Moses led the other ones out of the desert. The very first people who wanted to go after the Hebrews were the Amalekites.
Oh.
So we have this long, long history with the Amalekites wanting to wipe out the Hebrews.
Yeah.
Long history. So when you get to Gideon, you find him threshing grain in a wine vat. So there's this element of fear, right? They're all afraid. They're all afraid. So who's going to stand up in this time of fear? And this is who God picks.
Right.
So he's in there. He's in the wine vat, and he's threshing away. Probably looking around like this, got that scared...
Hope nobody finds me.
Scared look on his face. And then an angel shows up. And an angel greets him. Music, violins,
right,
clouds.
Bright lights.
So the angel shows up, and like he greets Mother Mary, we start with, don't be afraid, fear not.
Yeah.
And then he adds, you mighty man of valor. So he's talking to the guy who's hiding in a...
Oh, you who are so brave as you hide away in this place.
So this is how he starts, be not afraid, you mighty man of valor. And of course, if you're Gideon, you're like, what?
Who is he talking to?
Mighty man of valor? What?
And it wasn't me.
So the angel says that God's calling you to raise an army to fight the Midianites. Right? So this angel shows up and calls you, don't be afraid, you mighty man of valor. You're like, whoa. You
pumping him up.
Yeah,
you're so brave.
He is. He's seriously pumping him up. And do you think Gideon rises to the occasion?
No.
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 We start with right out of the chute. He's like, basically, God hasn't taken care of the Israelites. So it's kind of like that song from Janet Jackson. What have you done for me lately?
Oh, that's a good song. And I gotta go listen to that. Yeah.
He basically leads with, well, God hasn't taken good care of the Israelites.
Yeah.
But the angel's not really strike one. The angel's not really having anything to do with this. So then he moves on and he says, well, I'm from the smallest of the tribes. I'm from the tribe of Manasseh. Mm-hmm. Basically implying that I won't be able to get a lot of people behind me.
Yeah.
Because I don't have
a lot of influence.
I'm from a small tribe.
Yeah.
Who's going to rally here? And when you go back, way back in time, the small tribe of Manasseh was, now go back to the last session, that was one of Joseph's 2 sons. And when, rather than taking his full portion, when Israel's blessing his sons and they're dividing up the land, he says, give it to my sons. And he has 2 sons. So his parcel of land is divided between his 2 sons.
Okay.
So this really is a small plot of land.
Yeah.
There's probably not a lot of people there. Mm-hmm. And the angel's still not buying that, strike 2. So then he says, oh, and besides that, I'm just kind of a small guy. I'm kind of, in my family, I'm kind of small.
Mm-hmm.
Mighty man of valor.
No, the angel's like, did I ask you? Did I say that I cared? No.
Goodness gracious! So 3 times he's already like, no, I don't. I'm not your guy. You go back to Moses. I'm not your guy. I'm not your guy. And then he asked for a sign. Holy cow! This is an angel of the Lord. Mm-hmm. So the angel says, all right, go get some food ready for me and do a sacrifice. So he gets all the food ready. He puts it out on the table, and the angel calls down fire from heaven and. Mm-hmm. Is that enough for you, buddy?
He's like, oh, you're an angel.
And then it says, and Gideon's eyes were open. I bet they were. Just called down fire from heaven. I bet his eyes were open. So in this very short, first 2 paragraphs, we get a lack of courage, a lack of faith in questioning God.
A lack in general.
Yeah, and this is who God's calling.
Yeah.
So then we move forward and gets the sign, and then that night God appears in a dream. So we've already had one sign, right?
Yeah.
And God appears in a dream to Gideon, and he tells him, I want you to tear down the altar that your dad, so his dad must be pretty high up in the village. Yeah. I want you to tear down the altar that your dad built to Baal, and the one next to it is the Asheroth one.
Yeah.
So this is where they're doing
the pagan sacrifices.
Yeah. I want you to go tear them down, and I want you to replace it and build an altar for me. Wow, that's actually asking someone a lot. The whole village is sacrificing to these things.
Yeah, that's their religion, and you want it would be like disrespecting a statue of a saint or something.
Yes. So Gideon is so afraid to do this. He waits until dark, and then he gets a couple of house servants to go out with him.
He's like, if I'm going down, you're coming with me.
So in the night, they destroy these altars. So the next day, of course, the village people are ticked.
Right.
Who did this? And pretty quickly they figure out who did
He's
this.
hiding the stone.
He was probably back in the wine press. Oh, crap.
Why do you have ash and dust all over you there? Wipes face. No, I don't.
You smell like wine. What's up with that?
The party last night.
So the village people are calling for him to be killed.
Right.
You just got to kill this guy.
As you do.
Yeah, you're just disgracing your father, you're disgracing your tribe, you're disgracing the village.
Dishonor on you, dishonor on your family, dishonor on your cow.
Hey, we're having what is that moment? The Disney movie, you'll be an honor to your family.
Mulan. That's what I was just quoting. Yeah. Dishonor on you, dishonor on your family, dishonor on your cow. Yeah.
So the villagers are going to rise up and kill him, and it's not really clear in the story what happens, but they decide not to. Mm-hmm. It's not really clear, but he gets a different name, right? Remember what happens when God calls you and you get a different name.
Yeah.
So he goes from being called Gideon to being called Jerubbaal, which means Baal contends against him.
Right.
He gets renamed.
Not the favorite buddy of Baal.
Yeah. But it's just so interesting. So we've already had an angel visitor, a dream from God, and you would think the guy's like, bring it on. They didn't kill me. Bring it on.
I'm protected. No.
No. We just keep going down the road. It's strike 2 already. So we hit this one, and at this point, the Midianites and the Amalekites have come together, and they're going to attack together. So there's a lot of them. We're talking tens of thousands.
Oh, okay.
Tens of thousands of them. And at this point, God enters into Gideon, now called Jerubbaal, and he fills him with spirit and courage and everything. It's like, yeah, this is great. I'm going to fight for God.
Right.
And God says, I want you to blow the trumpet, send some messengers, and rouse the men to come fight. Mm-hmm. Seems like a pretty reasonable expectation.
Yeah.
So get a trumpet. And when you think trumpet, it was probably this horn, a ram's horn or something.
Right.
Just imagine. It's not that big, so you have to have a lot of, you're a singer, you have to have a lot of air in your lungs to go.
You gotta, really use your chest muscles. That's the thing.
He says, I want you to call your brethren, and we're going to go into battle. So even though we just heard that Gideon has the indwelling of God in him, Gideon goes, actually, could you give me another sign? And he's very
still not sure.
Not really sure. I know you have an indwelling. I know you saved me from the villagers, but
I know you have an
I'm really-
indwelling. I know that you're inside me, guiding me right now, but
I'm still a little concerned here. So he gives God this very specific sign, and God fulfills it. Okay. We've already had a couple things happen now. So, and I had to stop there, because how often have I asked God for a sign? You get the feeling you're being asked to do something like, well, and I say this on a regular basis, could you be more specific? Could you show me something and be really clear? I just did this yesterday. Could you be really clear about that? Because you're like, I'm not sure. I
think it could be this, but I need you to clarify, because I don't want to be totally mistaken here. Yeah. I also asked the same questions.
Oh my goodness. But anyway, Gideon finally goes, okay, I'll do it. You can just imagine okay,
fine.
If I have to.
Yeah.
I guess.
Drags feet.
So he said, okay, I'll do it. And God says, okay, well, bring this army. So he does. He sends the messengers out. He blows the horn, and a lot of people show up. And interestingly enough, so we know there's like 10,000 Amalekites and Midianites. So there's a couple thousand people gather for this, right? And God says, that's too many. Whittle that number down. So he sends some of them home. And when you read Numbers and Leviticus and Deuteronomy, you see that they would often say, anybody who has a new bride at home, like you haven't been able to have a child,
Have kids, yeah.
or if you have elderly parents and you're taking care of them, there's always some reasons why you could not go to battle. So he probably did that normal. Okay, who here has a new wife at home? Who here has a new baby at home? And it used to be hadn't been married more than a year. Who's caring for elderly parents? And those ones get sent home. And then God says, okay, get rid of some more. That's still too many. So if you're Gideon, and you probably have spies out there, and you see all these people gathering.
Right. You said there was like 10,000.
Yeah.
Like a lot.
A lot. And God says, that's too many. Send some more home. And we finally get down to about 300. And how do we get down to 300? This is bizarre. It's like this time God says, I'm going to turn the tables, and you're going to give me a sign. So he says, have all the guys go down to the water. And the ones who go like this and scoop up the water and go, like a dog does, or just drink from your hand, send those ones back. But all the ones who get down on their hands and knees, put their face in the water and drink from the water, keep those ones. So I had to really think about that. A lot of us do this, walk up to a spigot and drink like that. I thought, well, okay, this movement face down is a sign of obeisance in Arabic culture. So if you bend all the way over and put your face in the water, that is a sign of obeisance. It's a sign of obeying, right? Because we read when Jesus is resurrected and they hugged his feet, and it means they literally lay down and hold onto his feet and not look up. So it's like God said, okay, I've been trying to get you to do what I want you to do. I got all these people for you. All of you need to show a little bit of obedience. So those of you who put your face in the water, you can keep. And the other ones who now get to go home, Gideon says, okay, before you leave, just give me your jars. So they probably had water jars. They probably had clay jars or something like that to carry water. Yeah. And he says, before you go, give me your jars.
Hey, everyone, give me your Gatorade bottles before you go. And they're like, what? Don't worry, God needs them. Why? Well, you see.
So that is bizarre. You just imagine if one of the people being sent home and the boss says, all right, just give me your water bottle. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
So they all do. They give Gideon all their water bottles, water jars. Yeah. And God says, all right, tonight go attack, because I'm going to give them into your hand, right? Go attack. But God knows Gideon by now. If you don't want to do that, take one of your servants and go down into their camp tonight.
All right, I'll give you a plan B.
So Gideon, of course, take God's up on plan B, because to this point, he hasn't just done anything God asked. So
he questions about every little step. Yep.
Everything. So he takes one of his servants down, and they go into the camp. And they sneak into the camp, and they hear these two guys talking. And one of them had a bad dream. And he's telling the other one what the dream is. And the other one says, well, that's Gideon. That's the mighty valor Gideon, who's going to come in and we're going to lose. He's going to decimate us. We're going to lose. Of course, this would have sent tremors of terror through the camp. So Gideon now is feeling pretty good, right? Not only they're just kind of nervous. I'm just going to run up there, grab my guys. So he goes back up there and he tells the guys, he said, just bring your water jar, bring a torch, and bring your horn. And your horn would have probably been like a ram's horn or something like
Right.
that. And that's all you guys are going to bring. That's it.
Don't worry about anything else.
So number one, if you're a follower and you're getting ready to go up a couple thousand Amalekites and
Ready to go to
Midianites,
war.
and I'm going to get a water jar. I'm going to get a water jar. So everybody had to step out on faith here.
Right.
Gideon
Yeah.
is going to have to stand up and go, we can do this.
Don't worry, guys.
So he sends it down and he goes, and I want everybody just surround the camp. So just imagine this camp with a couple thousand people, and there's probably little fires everywhere, and most people are sleeping, maybe a couple sentries. So the guys surround the camp, and when I give you the signal, break the water jar. And then put the little horn to your mouth and say, for the Lord and for Gideon. So the guys do what he says. They encircle the camp, and on their signal, they break all the water jars. So it would have made a huge noise, because you know how much sound carries at night, because there's not a whole lot of background thing absorbing the sound.
Right.
So it has this huge crashing noise. So if you're this person and you're in your tent or you're sleeping under the stars and you hear this huge crashing noise, immediately followed by 300 people going, woo, woo,
Right.
like that, and then yelling for the Lord and for Gideon. Well, terror ensues in the camp.
Right.
And these people all scatter in all sorts of different directions. They just flee from the battle.
Yeah.
So I often wonder if that's where we got the fact that the jars, that's how Marines got their name, the jar heads. But anyway.
Makes sense.
But then Gideon has the Ephraimites chase them, basically run them down.
Right.
Because with 300 people, you're not going to run down a couple thousand. So the army of Ephraim
They're
are the ones who
combine forces and
and chase all these guys down. But the whole story is about Gideon, who from the very beginning, like strike three in the first conversation.
Yeah.
Number one, I'm from the smallest tribe. Number two, I'm the littlest one of my family. Number three, it doesn't look like God's got my back anyway.
No.
So all the way through this story, Gideon is being called and led and shown all these signs.
And he keeps pushing back.
And he keeps pushing back, but he finally does what God asked. And it's this stunning defeat. Absolutely stunning defeat. So the big story is like, okay, even those of us who in everyday life are struggling to follow God, God's not calling me to go to war with water jars.
I sure hope not.
I'm not giving torches and water jars and being told to rout an enemy. It's just get up today and I'd like you to do this and I'd like you to follow my laws and I'd like you to talk to other people about me. Oh, we're all called to do stuff, and sometimes it is really hard. But sometimes you finally just say yes. I mean, sometimes I think it's God wears you down and you go, okay.
Yeah.
I think that was Gideon. Okay.
Oh, fine. Yeah. Well, I think it only is so hard as we make it out to be. I mean, if with God, all things are possible. So if you're going to sit there and scrutinize over every little detail and throw a fit about it and kind of drag your feet about it, then it's probably going to be kind of hard. But if you're just like, all right, here it is, and then you keep moving forward on it. I mean, I know in my life, there's been lots of things where it seems impossible or it seems really hard, and literally it just happens. Like, I don't even do that much work, because I'm just like, well, I'm going to keep following this path and saying yes.
Yeah.
And it just works out. So, I don't know. Less stress, I guess.
I think that's why it's helpful to read these stories. Like Moses, I've said this a couple times, basically 7 times, says, I'm not your guy.
Right.
But as long as you keep moving forward, you can question, you can say, are you sure? Can you show me a sign? But as long as you keep moving forward. So Gideon questioned, but he just still kept moving forward.
Yeah, he wasn't like, no, threw a fit.
And then he ends up becoming the fifth judge of the judges. Yeah. So I think it's a great story, because you talk about a guy who was hiding in a wine vat threshing the grain because he's afraid the Midianites are going to come and
Little mouse.
He is hiding in the barn in a wine vat when God calls him.
Yeah.
And he starts him, hey, God is with you, mighty man of valor, because he doesn't come across as the mighty man of valor.
You sure about that? I don't think so.
But then Gideon's going to bridge us to the New Testament, because the next one, which is, you talk about zero to hero, is my son's favorite saint, which is Peter. Because Peter just messes up over and over again. But, Peter's just so passionate about the Lord and so passionate about Jesus that he keeps messing up, but he keeps moving forward.
Yeah.
And his name,
he
he's one of those people, we talked about this a couple of times. When you get renamed, it's because God's called you to something and you're stepping into a new role. You're going to do God's will. So Jesus renames him from Simon to Peter. Peter, of course, means rock.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of positives about me being a rock. Like you could be Dwayne the Rock Johnson,
Yeah.
Or you could be solid as a rock, or on this rock I will build my church. But Peter's kind of like a box of rocks a couple times, or dumber than a box of rocks.
He's not so smart. Not so good.
So it's just so interesting that Jesus reaches down and says, and on this rock, Peter, literally this rock, I will build my church. Because even at that point, Peter made a lot of mistakes. So you have to step back and go, well, why would God pick this guy who's probably illiterate, a fisherman, Fishermen weren't the most highly esteemed people out there.
Yeah. They
But-
had to work hard, and they were
They probably
pretty poor.
smelled like fish.
Probably smelled like fish, yeah.
Yeah, but he says, I will make you fishers of men, which is an interesting call. Follow me and I will make you fishers of men.
Yeah.
But really being a fisherman is hard. So I have a couple relatives who did the deep sea fishing boats. And the weather's terrible and you have to be really strong and you have to go without sleep. It's hard work.
Yeah, I have some friends that do that.
It is
Yeah.
really hard work. So Jesus calls somebody who's accustomed to really hard physical work, and that hard physical work transfers eventually into hard spiritual work. When you talk about it from zero to hero, one of the first times you read Peter really stepping on it is
Yeah, he does.
he's been following Jesus for a couple years now. And I love this because the disciples are still asking him questions. He's like, you guys have been with me for 3 years and
Why are
you
you
still
so
don't
dumb?
get this. But at one point, he's getting them ready now. He's in the last year of his ministry.
Right.
He's getting close to the last trip to Jerusalem. And he's told them a couple of times now, I'm going to die an unpleasant death. They're going to surround me. I'm going to die a torturous death. And it's not going to be
Yeah, the Son of
glorious and
Man.
everything.
Yeah, all that.
Yeah, the Son of Man's going to suffer, and he's going to suffer terribly. And Peter is just doesn't want to hear this.
He's in denial for sure.
Yeah, because
he's
denial is not a river in Egypt. It's
He's
alive.
in denial.
Denial.
Yeah.
So Peter basically looks at Jesus and says, "No, I'm not gonna. This isn't gonna happen. I refuse to believe this. I'm not gonna let it happen to you." And Jesus looks at him and says, "Satan, get behind me."
Yeah.
Wow, I can't imagine getting any worse than Jesus calling me Satan.
Yeah. It's pretty aggressive. Just a little bit. But I think here, it's not necessarily, I think it's not him saying Satan directly, right?
Yeah.
It's more of just like, you're a temptation.
Yes.
Because, I mean, Jesus has that whole moment in the garden where he's like, hey, like, please let this pass from me. You know, he is fully man.
Right.
Like, and we forget that all the time. And so
Yeah.
for him, he's making it obvious, like, you are being a temptation to me in my human side, in
Yeah.
offering an out right now is what you're doing. And so maybe
Yeah.
I might find comfort being like, oh, Peter will save me. It's like, no, I need you to get behind me because
Yeah.
I know that this has to be done.
Oh, I hadn't thought of it that way too. It's literally get behind me.
Yeah.
You know, not just saying, "Hey,
You're
Peter,
in my
Peter,
way."
I need you to get behind me. You need to get on board here with what's going to happen
Yeah.
because this is what's going to happen."
It's tough stuff, buddy, and I need your support rather
Yeah.
than you pushing back on this because it's hard enough as it is.
Yeah.
So it might even be more of like a plea, like, please help me here, rather than
Yeah.
you're making me angry, you know, which I'm sure he might have felt both of those emotions, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess that's how I'm processing it, is like, I need your support, please. You know?
Well, there's certainly at least two different ways to interpret it, and I hadn't thought of it that way. Please get behind me literally and support what I'm doing here. Because leadership is hard, period.
Right.
And then the next one, the next big strike too, is three things at once, right? After, there's even one between them. So we're in the Garden of Gethsemane. Jesus is praying, and he's got the guys, and they
Right.
had wine with dinner, and they're full, and
They're sleepy.
And he says, "You go over there, and I'm going to pray, and please stay awake and pray
Yeah.
with me." And he comes back, and they're asleep. And he's like, "Okay, guys, let's try this again."
1 hour, come on.
He goes off, and he comes back, and they're sleeping again. He said, "Couldn't you stay awake for an hour?"
Yeah.
That's really all he needed. Because he needs, like you just said, he probably needed their prayers to wrap around him and strengthen him for what was coming, because he knew what was coming.
He felt so alone.
Yeah.
So alone. And then, I mean, honestly, can you imagine being like, guys, I need this favor, like, can you pray with me tonight, you know? Like, and I'm sure we've had friends, moments like that, where it's
Yeah.
like, guys, I just really need to pray with my community right now. And they're like, cool. And then they, like, get on their phones or something, you know? Like, I know it's not quite to the extreme degree of blowing off Christ who's about to save the world, but you get what I'm saying. And so,
Yeah.
like, you feel so isolated, not only physically, but spiritually.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if you guys have ever been spiritually isolated, but it's pretty
Yeah.
rough.
Yeah, when you really feel like you're by yourself. It's such a blessing when you find out somebody else is praying for you. Sometimes someone will just text you or call you or email you and say, "Just wanted to let you know I'm praying for you." And you
Yeah.
just break down and cry right away.
I'm thinking of you. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's all you need. I'm praying for you. And you're like,
Yeah. If somebody's name pops into your head,
Yeah.
send them a text. I try to do that as much as I can because I'm like,
Yeah.
you know what? I've been thinking about them for the past 3 days. I wonder why. And then I'll send them
Yeah.
a text and
They need prayers. People show up in my dreams when they need prayers. And it's the next morning I'll get up and call them or email or text them and say, you showed up in my dream last night. Do you need prayers?
They're
and
like, why are you dreaming about me?
Yeah. But anyway, so there's a second strike. And then the third one is just the colossal 3 all at once. When they have come to the garden and they've hauled Jesus off and all of the other disciples run away. And I can't blame them. They showed up with clubs and Roman soldiers.
Torches, pitchforks.
Yeah. So you can understand why the rest of them went.
Right. I'm outie.
Yeah. So fell asleep when you asked me to pray, and then the bad things show up and they run away. And the only one, as far as I can tell, the only one who goes near the praetorium, the only one who shows up and gets close so he can understand what's happening, is Peter. And like Jesus said, before the cock crows 3 times, you will deny me. Sure enough, in less than 24 hours, in about 12 hours, 3 times, do you know this man? I don't know him. You're with him. I don't know him. I tell you, I don't know him. And then,
oh. Well, yeah, and on the last one, he's like, I swear on, blah, blah, blah. Like, he goes off for like a minute about, he's like, I do not know the man. Like, curse me. Like, anyone who says, it was like a whole thing. It's like, wow, okay.
Yeah, some serious strikes there.
Yeah.
So if you're Peter, like you have just stepped on it a number of times in a very short period of time. If you're Peter and he's already said, on this rock I will build my church, and basically said, I will give you the keys of the kingdom, you've got to be thinking, he couldn't possibly be me because I'm obviously worthless.
Yeah.
So if you're Peter, the fact that Jesus looks at you, just looks across the courtyard and sees you.
Told you so.
Now you just feel like total zero. But when you look at that, and then Jesus of course dies, but I like how when they go back and the ladies go and they say that he's not there, they've taken his bodies, and then the one goes back and says, I saw him. Peter runs. Peter and the beloved disciple runs. Because it's like, oh wow, like he is here. And you can just see them running. They've been terrified. They've been holed up in a room. They're afraid they're going to come after me. And they said, and he's back. And he runs to see it. Just runs to see it. He was telling the truth the whole time.
Yep.
Telling the truth the whole time. And then you look at that, and Peter is the one selected to get this mob together and start a church. The guy, and of course all the other apostles know how many times he's messed up, right?
Yeah.
And Jesus says, and I still pick you. I still pick you. I still pick you. So the other disciples had to turn around and place their trust in Peter because Jesus had.
Right. Well, they had to trust Jesus and they had to trust Peter.
Yeah.
Which was probably pretty hard.
Yeah. Because we just watched him be a blockhead repeatedly.
They're all sitting there like, bro.
Yeah, but that's why when you look at transition from the Old Testament to the New Testament, who moved from zero to hero, it's kind of like Peter was on the trajectory there to be the hero. On this rock I will build my church, I will give you the keys, and then we're back to zero. And then over time, and you see what this small group of people did under his leadership. It goes from a Jewish faith that it seems like it actually stopped looking for the Messiah, and it was all about just get along with whoever's in charge of us now.
Right.
Just get along
Follow
with them.
Follow the rules and get along.
And Peter's called to really take Judaism for what it was meant to be. This is what it looks like if you do this well. If you're in communion with God, if you're a loving, righteous child of God, this is what it looks like. And that must have taken a huge amount of courage too, because you already know that the Pharisees and the Sadducees are just waiting to see who they need to take out next.
Yep.
Who they need to take out next, and then the first martyr becomes Stephen. But over the course of time, Peter just holds his ground. And here's the last one. When Jesus appears right before he ascends, and they're out on the fishing boat again, and they see the light on the shore, and they realize that's him. They realize that's him. And they go to the shore, and God asks him, Jesus asks him, Peter, do you love me? And he says, yes, I love you. And then makes it one more time. Peter, do you love me? Yes, you know I love you. Peter, do you love me? Yes, 3 times. And Peter gives him, yes, you know I love you, Father, then feed my sheep. And this is about the time when he tells Jesus, and Jesus tells Peter, and when you are old, they will take your hands and lead you where you don't want to go. So if you step into this ministry and you run this ministry,
path,
it's not going to end well for you. And Peter still says yes. So we're back on our way up to being a hero. And look at the church it's been through for 2,000 years. Up, down, up, down, up, down. But there's always a core of people who just won't let go, who continue to preach, who continue to believe, even to today's society. It's not cool right now to be a Christian. Most persecuted religion on the planet right now is Christianity. You just say yes. Okay. Not sure you want from me. I'm not particularly gifted, but yes. Yeah.
Well, guys, just know that you'll probably go from 0 to hero yourselves as long as you keep saying yes. So,
yeah. And you might go 0, hero, 0, hero, 0.
You might have a little bit more of a zigzaggy path, but
it's okay to have a Gideon moment. It's fine.
Yeah.
Just keep saying yes.
Definitely.
Yep.
Alrighty, guys. Well, thank you once again for joining us. Our last episode will be coming out, let's see, I think next week, right? I think we have one more. And then, we'll have other projects. We'll have other stuff.
Okay.
There'll always be something new. Follow our Instagram page. Follow Salt and Light and all of our other content. If you're not already listening to the radio show Morning Light, it's at 7 a.m. on Mountain Standard Time. Sorry, I have to make sure. So that's like 6 a.m. Pacific or something like that, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So early stuff, but they have very excellent interviews on there.
Yes.
And we have a live stream on YouTube if you want to watch the show. So,
Yeah, it is actually a great way to start your day.
Yeah, it is. All right, guys. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you next time.
All right. Bye-bye. God bless.